things stand with the chief search? Are they down to candidates or?
No, I think they should be receiving some resumes by the next 2 weeks. That was my understanding, but. You have Pam here. Your legal counsel's here.
Hey Pam.
Good evening, team.
Hi. Thank you for coming.
Always a pleasure.
So Remy, our camera's got the red lights on it. Right?
Yes.
Okay, so I should mute that, right? All right. Hey Bellamy.
Bellamy, how you feeling? Enough said.
Well, staying in public.
Enough said. Your face said it all.
Yep.
Gentlemen, Mr. Barry.
Good evening.
So are you COVID-y or is it something else?
I don't know. It's probably just regular. This type of. Hopefully, I got the with that covariant. I guess about a week ago, and the flu shot. So
Ah,
I hope I'm fine.
well, thank you for coming. Appreciate it. We'll be starting in a moment. I see Mr. Cooper coming down the hall. Hey. No problem.
Hey Shad, how you doing? How you doing? Doing well, thanks. So we have no, we don't have a quorum. Oh, yes, we do have a quorum.
We do have a quorum.
Yay.
All right. It is, so, as I said, Ms. Carpenter has indicated she probably won't make it, at least, not anytime soon. James will be checking in around 8.
Okay. Is he coming online or live?
He's there's an update. It's about 14 minutes. From my understanding, he would be in person.
All right. Well done. And I have not heard from Deidre despite
Okay.
repeated attempts to contact her, so. um, So I'm not expecting anyone else to show up right away, so I assume we can get started.
Okay.
I would call this October meeting of the Charlottesville Civilian Police Civilian Oversight Board to order. First order of business is announcements. And obviously, there's a very important announcement related to our executive director, but I will leave that, beyond saying we'll be very, very sorry to see him go. I'll leave that to him when he makes his executive director's report. He has provided us with the minutes from the last meeting.
Sir, if I may?
Yes.
There's just a minor correction. I apologize. When I drafted, I put the council, the independent council that was present, I put Ms. O'Berry, but it was actually Ms. Hudson. So I don't know if that's something that you can entertain a motion to amend, but it should say Ms. Cynthia Hudson as your guest.
Entertain a motion to make that change.
So moved.
Any seconds?
I second.
Counsel?
Okay. Member Cooper,
Yes.
Member Frazier,
Yes.
Member Brown,
Yes.
and Chair Mendes.
Yes, I assume so. That means that we have approved the amended version of the minutes. We have a agenda also. Does anyone have any comments, corrections, changes they would like to make at this point?
To the agenda?
Yes, please.
No. Not me.
Okay.
Anyone want to make a motion?
I make a motion.
Second.
Okay, motion to approve the agenda. Member Brown,
Yes.
Member Cooper,
Yes.
Member Frazier,
Yes.
and Chair Mendes.
Yes. Now, having done that, I guess, we'll move on to the first public comments session. Is there anyone, there's no one here, let the record show that. Is there anyone online?
I don't see any active participants online at this time, sir.
All right, we're charging through this one then. Now, what we originally had here was the outreach committee report with Vice Chair Watson reporting. Since he's going to be late, we could either slide over this issue, or Hansel, did you discuss with him whether you were going to talk about it?
So I can talk to the other events. There was one event that he attended, but I'm more than happy to discuss the other events.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So since last meeting, there were 3 events posted, or 4 events. 3 of them were attended by board members. The one that was attended by Vice Chair Watson was the UVA event, and he had some commentary regarding that during his observations. But I can speak to, and some of the members here that were there can speak to the event on September 17th, which was the Civil Sabroso, and that was organized by Sin Barreras, and we had the opportunity to table with the Office of Human Rights. And we attended the event, and it was a really good turnout. I believe it was the first time since the pandemic that they had this festival, and it's normally organized, from my understanding, at Aches Park, but this time it was in Washington Park. And I saw a lot of community members there. We had the opportunity to raise awareness about the board, and had the opportunity to share the table with with the Office of Human Rights. I don't know if the members that were present there want to talk a little bit more about their experience there.
Well, I found it to be very, very rewarding. I could only be there for a couple of hours. And to get a little better feel for the Hispanic community in this part of the world, which I, to my regret, have not done previously. Just as an aside, I learned what a mamey is. And it is a fruit, kind of pinkish fruit, which is delicious. That's all I have on that.
Yeah, I had some pretty good conversations with a couple of folk that walked up, and they were, I guess, appreciative of the board's presence and the work that the board is doing in general. I mean, there was obviously they came at it from a perspective of balance, where it's sure we don't want to bash the police, but at the same token, they don't want folks' rights being violated, and so they were encouraged that we were out and sharing and bringing awareness.
Oh, one thing I want to ask Hansel before, were you done?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I noticed that the Office of Human Rights had those very small kind of pamphlet things about, what to do in an encounter with the police. Were those ours or theirs? Because
That's something that they actually created a few years back. And they had some resources, and those were ones that are still from the batch that they made last time, but they said that when they do update them, they are gonna add the board's information there, so.
Yeah, because I just found those to be extremely useful even as they were. And after that, it was the Pride weekend.
Yes, so we had the Pride Festival was the following day in Nix Park, and that, from my observation, was a good turnout. I don't have a basis for comparison for other years, but there were a lot of community members there, and also had the opportunity to raise awareness. We had community members from all ages, and which was really good. I had one of the community members, a younger one. She asked really thoughtful questions, and one of her concerns were, if you engage in this process, what's the assurance that it'll be taken seriously? So we engaged in a discussion about that, and about the ordinance and the procedures in place, and what that process looks like. So I thought it was a really positive event.
I would agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, I'm sorry, I was,
No, go ahead.
it was,
Sorry.
it was a great event, eye-opener, especially, everything that came out during that week, with our governor. Just to see, them come out and not even affect them, and them to just, celebrate who they are, and, just to be free. So that was a good experience.
Actually, I met I believe the chair of the governor's commission on LGBTQ issues. And that was just the day or two before the governor's decision on trans youth in schools. I haven't gotten back to him, but I probably should.
I don't have any additional events. Oh, excuse me, I do, sorry. No, it wasn't an event that was, and I was gonna, well, I guess we could transition to the executive director's report, or unless you had other commentaries on it.
Hearing no objections, sure.
Okay, so one other event, as I mentioned last time, the NACO conference, the in-person conference was coming up. I had the opportunity to attend, see a lot of the colleagues around the country and the work that they're doing. It had the opportunity to meet the new auditor for the Arlington County, and we had the opportunity to discuss different matters and other colleagues around the country. So it was a really good event and a lot of energy regarding civilian oversight. I mentioned that I was running for the board position, the at-large. I did run and I did not win. But, you know, that's something that, I got a lot of positive feedback, so I'll incorporate that for future attempts at getting that board membership. I think it would be helpful to get some representation from this side of the country in NACO. A lot of the members are out west or in other parts of the country. So that'll be something to keep in mind, to have some representation at NACO. I think it'll be important. There is a follow-up, a virtual version of it coming up in October. There's a few dates, and I'll resend the information about that. There is a presentation about oversight in the Old Dominion, and I'll be able to talk a little bit about the progress here in Charlottesville, and it'll be joined by the colleagues in Fairfax, Arlington, and at UVA, and the work that they're doing there. Okay.
And that one is on the 20th, isn't it?
Believe it's the 26th. I'll look it
Okay.
up again. I don't quote me on it right now, but I'll send the reminder.
All right.
Outside of events, as you mentioned, Mr. Chair, the one big announcement that was made this week was my departure, and I will be leaving my post here next week. And I just want to reiterate, some of the statements I shared with the board, that I think we were able to build some momentum around the police accountability here during my time, and hopefully I was able to contribute to some infrastructure that could be used to continue to work here. I appreciated the efforts from the board members and the time that they devoted to these efforts, and I hope that this good work continues. It wasn't an easy decision for sure. I think that I was getting acclimated to the community and building some good relationships, so do want to emphasize that. I wish the best for the city of Charlottesville as it continues this very difficult discussion. And you're not alone. We're part of a community of civilian oversight practitioners and communities that have taken on this journey to have better police relations. So I commend you for the work that you're doing here.
Well, if I can just make a personal observation, I've been delighted to work with you, Hansel, as well. You've left us an extremely strong foundation in terms of resources related to police oversight, and you've provided an example of energy and hard work that will be hard for us to live up to, but I think it was very inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I do want to state, as I go through this report, I apologize. I had some access issues with my Canva account, so I don't have the report in the format that I normally like to present it to you in. But I'll have that up and running, and I'll share it with the board, and I'll post it on the website as I normally do. But I can still go through the different items that I normally do. One of the announcements I made last time was the management analyst position. And right now, in light of the developments with my departure, I think it's going to be a really good opportunity to select that individual as soon as we can. And we did begin that search. We had some interviews, some really good candidates. So we're in the process of that, and hopefully we'll be able to make that decision. I think that one of the things that I mentioned, I think it'll be crucial to have somebody that's fully dedicated as a staff member to the administrative support of the board. I think that it's not helpful to have somebody that has other duties outside of the board. So having this dedicated management analyst and then your executive director is going to be crucial for your success. The other item of my the report would be the oversight activity. Since your last meeting, there were no new review requests, but there was one initial complaint received, and this complaint was regarding a motorist that was involved in a vehicle accident, and he alleged that the officer gave him a bad ticket. That the officer later went back and ripped it up because he realized that the ticket was not accurate. He initially cited the motorist for being at fault, but then realized after reviewing video footage that the motorist was not at fault. So the complainant it stated that he's experiencing some issues with his insurance company because of this bad ticket he received. So that was sent to the Internal Affairs Department, and they would investigate it, issue the closure letter, and if the complainant is not satisfied, then they can request review from the board. Okay. The next item would be the update on the neutral evaluation. The neutral evaluation report and the evaluation and the report were completed and provided to the parties on September 28th, as we agreed. There was a deadline request, there was a request to push back the deadline by the CPD, so it has been pushed back by agreement from the complainant, so there's just additional 2 weeks. But once those responses from the CPD and the complainant are made available, then they will be posted on the website, the full neutral evaluation report along with the CPD response and the complainant's response. As you may have known, there was an article that came out in the local media that discussed the neutral evaluation report, and just, I guess by way of information, that report in full will be made public. So it's just a matter of time before the CPD can respond and the complainant, and then they will be posted on the website.
But there's no intent for you to actually revise what you've done in response to those comments?
That was not the agreement, so the idea behind the way the neutral evaluation worked, it was to sort of replicate what a hearing would be. So it was an opportunity for the parties to express to present their facts to me, and I spoke with the complainant, Mr. Fogel. I heard what commentary he provided in addition to his review request. The police department did not provide additional information beyond the report, so I did my evaluation based on the report, and then the parties get the opportunity to speak on it. But there is, beyond Mr. Fogel's final response, there is no additional action necessarily needed. Other than the stakeholders, there were different recommendations I made in my report to the city council, to the city manager, to the police department and the board, and it would be up to those different stakeholders to adopt the recommendations or not adopt them.
Okay, thank you.
The other item that we discussed at last meeting was the clause in the ordinance that indicates that you don't, that there are instances where the board does not need to conduct a review hearing. And there was a request that I provide a template or some recommendations about what that could look like. I did develop a matrix, and unfortunately I didn't have it in time to be included in the agenda, but it will be provided to the board and published and made public. But I did model it after some of the way that we did it in Fairfax. So if I could just give you a background on that. When we, in Fairfax County, we we also had the opportunity to consider whether we wanted to do a meeting, which was our equivalent of a hearing. And we did that by assigning liaisons to go review the case file. It was a group of, I think, I want to say three panelists that we sent to review the case file. And then we had a list of criteria that they would go down the list and determine whether this would, whether it was necessary to have a meeting or not. So it was similar. I utilized that kind of framework to provide the recommendations here. And I'll have that information to you again. I'll submit it to you. But some of the questions that are mandatory by the ordinance is whether the review request was within 75 days of the issuance of the investigative report. So that would be a mandatory criteria as the ordinance. Whether it was filed to the executive director, again, that's language from the ordinance. And if applicable, whether the review request, in any review request, reviewing a matter where the complainant has not previously authorized board involvement in the investigation, the complainant must grant permission for the board to have access to the internal affair files and evidence they wish to pursue a review request. So there's a track in the process where somebody could have filed a initial complaint to the CPD, but not requested the board to be involved. But then they can go back and say, I want the board to be involved. So then they would need to make sure that they affirmatively request for the board to receive that information. So those three items are mandatory. But the other suggested items that the board could consider is whether the complainant actually wants a hearing. So a complainant may request just that the board reviews it, but they may not want to go through a hearing. So we should probably ask the complainant, do you want a hearing proper, or do you just want the board to review your the IA investigation? The other question to consider is there reason to believe that a review request hearing may answer questions not already answered by the case file? So, and that would be by the board members looking at the complete case file and saying, is there anything that a hearing would yield in addition to what's already available? And the similar question would be, will a hearing produce additional evidence, witnesses, and testimony not already accounted for in the case file? And that would be kind of just ways to not make the process redundant. You might have everything you need in the case file, and there might be times where you need clarification. So you can consider under the ordinance whether you want a hearing under limited circumstances to address one particular aspect, or you can have a full hearing. And that's just some of the questions that you could consider. You can expand on these questions and think of other questions, but that's kind of the analysis that I was trying to, and the matrix that I was trying to provide to the board.
Yeah, again, if I can respond, that's incredibly timely in the sense, I'll be talking a little bit later about the progress on the operating procedures, and those questions are precisely the ones that Pam and I are trying to deal with right now, so I'm sure that we'll be delighted to see what you produce.
Thank you. I'm just looking, making sure I got everything on my report. Oh, and the other item, which is outside of the executive director's report, but I guess we can talk about that then. But that's what I got right now for my report. And again, I'll provide it in the usual Canva format as soon as I get access again to my account, and I'll submit that to you and post it on the website.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. I think they fall under the purview of the executive director's report, although you didn't directly touch on them, and that is, to the extent that you're aware, what is going on with regard to finding a successor and finding an interim designee within the city government to act while we have no real executive director.
Yeah, I don't know the second part of the question, the interim component. I don't know what that process looks like. That would be a question for either Mr. Rogers or Deputy City Manager Ashley Marshall. I know that, I have been engaged already to update the position description to reflect the duties as contemplated under the new ordinance, because they have the position description under the PCRB, but not the PCOB. So I did update and provided some feedback on that. I do believe that there's a lot of interest in making sure that this is properly or in timely filled, this position, but I don't know the specifics of what that looks like.
Okay, well, thank you. I have a messaging to Ashley, and I have, just today, so it's not like she would get back to me immediately, but obviously that's on everybody's mind, so. And another question, which is a little bit out in left field, and that is, I don't want to use the term picking up the pieces, but I want to, soldiering on when you're not here, what functions can we continue to perform? I have already told Ms. Hepler that we're going to have to indefinitely postpone a hearing or any further action on her client's complaint. Do you have any feelings about, the best way, we might keep the momentum up? As you say, a backlog is a bad thing, and if we can do anything possible to deal with it, that would be very useful.
I have been engaged by some members of council to provide some recommendations about a path forward. The way that the ordinance is written, there are some duties that are required to be done by the executive director in these processes, to include the review request. So there is, I think that there's ways that can be achieved, but we would need to be strategic. So I'm giving it careful consideration on that. But the way that the ordinance is written, there is some duties and responsibilities that the executive director needs to complete to help you, to assist you in those processes. I think that it would be very beneficial, as I said, if we can get the management analysts on board. And I don't know if, again, to your question, it's hard to answer some of these questions right now because I don't know the plans in terms of the interim director and what that could look like. But I know that is already being considered by the city manager. In looking at the language in the ordinance, and I think it's very specific that it says obviously can't be a member of the department, which, and that's not something that they would even contemplate. But who within, do we have somebody within the city infrastructure, the organization right now that can be appointed for that? And again, I emphasize that I think it is crucial, somebody that can help you navigate this period, this transition period.
Well, if the city council and city manager have not specifically requested that you keep this confidential, we'd be delighted if you'd share your recommendations with us.
Recommendations on what exactly?
On how to move forward and which of the functions you think can continue to go forward.
Yeah, I don't have the recommendations at this moment, but I think that there's different models and that we can adopt in different strategies to, as you mentioned, get the momentum going. But one thing I do want to emphasize is that you're still in the limbo period because the city council has not passed the operating procedures. So the review request that we did for Mr. Fogel was done in the interim procedures that were provided by council. But now you're not at a point where you could technically do the duties as contemplated under the ordinance. So that's something that needs to be expedited, as you understand the procedures. Yeah. Once the procedures are in place, and hopefully the search is happened simultaneously, that the new director, my predecessor, could just go into the role and be able to help you pick up and keep the momentum going.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I'll talk more about the procedures, operating procedures in a while. Is that it for your report tonight?
I believe so, but I don't know if you wanted to provide an opportunity for Chair Watson to go back and discuss a little bit about
Oh,
his
I'm sorry,
experience in the at the UVA event that he attended a few weeks back.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate it, and I hadn't gotten to say, but thank you for your service, you know. Definitely, I think we're probably all really sad to see you go, but excited for you, you know, because looks like you have another great opportunity, and this was a tough position to jump into, and you in my opinion, done a great job.
Thank you.
So UVA had, in early September, I would call it more of a, well, I'm hearing myself echo. Maybe I'm talking too loud or something, I don't know. Can I turn one of these off, or are they just kind of stuck pretty much in on position?
That's to talk
Directly into it? Okay. All right, so UVA had what I would really call a pilot event where Courtney Hawkins, who's their diversity, equity, inclusion person within the Charlottesville PD, which is a new position. They hadn't had anything like that in the past. You know, wanted to put on a forum pretty much to introduce herself to the community. There wasn't a whole lot of advertisement for that event, and there wasn't a whole lot of attendees at the event. And it was really during the work week as well. So one of the things that we did suggest is next time, it'd be great if you were able to let more people know about it. But a lot of what took place was, you know, UVA explaining how they're trying to do business differently, you know, how they're approaching various situations where they're interacting with the LGBTQ plus community, obviously as well as the Black and brown community. They talked about scenarios where there may have been a fight on the UVA corner, and the police go to break up the fight, and a person was hit, let's say, and they may have been transgender. And when they go to ask for that person's ID, the person's ID may show that they're a male, what we may know of as a male, but they may not be presenting themselves that way. So they talked about historically they didn't pretty much deal with those types of situations very well, and so you know, they'll ask, well, what gender do you? I don't want to say the wrong words that offend anybody at all, but what gender do you you know, are you considered? And so a lot of the forms apparently that the police use, UVA, I believe the city, and even at a state level have not offered an other category. It's still kind of male and female, so they have to ask. So the forum, you know, I tried to pick and poke and get in there when I could because I was really working that week. I didn't really have time off. That was pretty interesting, talking about, you know, some of the officers on this UVA PD said, hey, we don't really understand pronouns. They didn't say that at the event I was at, but they had it sort of admitted this, and so we want to know, you know, what do they mean? You know, how does this work? How do we approach people? So in general, it is a step right now by them bringing in a DEI professional and trying to look at things different and work differently. And I think, you know, we should collaborate with them more. There wasn't a whole lot, I would say, you know, like I said, it was about 5 or 6 people in attendance. It was really cool because I got to meet one of Sally Hemings and Thomas Jefferson's descendants was there, Miss Gail Jessup White. It's really awesome meeting her. But I think the next time that they have that event, it'll be maybe more focused, more well-rounded. So I'm looking forward to what they have to say. And a couple other things. About 2 weeks ago, there was a group of African-American men that I was a part of. We got together actually in this very room at City Space, sort of in response to, there was a shooting a couple weeks ago as kids were being let off of school at Venable. It happened around 2:30. Kids were getting ready to walk home, and it happened around intersection of 9th and Anderson, not too far from 10th and Page. And so there's really a wealth of organizations doing a lot of charitable work in Charlottesville right now. And that includes Love No Ego, who we've had in our prior meeting, the Boys and Girls Club, obviously, the
City of Promise.
City of Promise, the Uru Foundation, MOCA, which is a UVA group, several groups. And so a lot of those folks that have started those organizations attended, and just a lot of men. And, so we sat in this room, we broke out in groups, and we talked about, what are things we can do to mentor some of the young men in the community. And, a lot of kids are not seeing themselves, right, in positive positions. How do I get from right here to where I want to be? Where do I want to be? What's possible, right? And so there's a lot of in general in the schools right now. There's a lot of problems. A lot of people suffering. COVID left people at home for 2 years. And a lot of abuse took place. And so anyway, the whole point of that is, where can we come together and try to help out? And it was really more of a group of black men, but as we move along, we're going to reach out and create more allies and more people to kind of figure this out. But we want to leverage, if you have one group, like let's say Love No Ego, and he may be working with a kid that wants to go to college, but maybe Freddie hasn't gone through the application process in 15, 20 years himself. Well, maybe there's somebody at UVA that has their own minority local group, and we can leverage that knowledge that they have to help some kid, and maybe take this young man out to the universities that he wants to go look at. Or maybe there's somebody that's in the area that's an electrician, and or a carpenter, or HVAC, and they may have some skill sets. So we're trying to figure all of that out, get it in a database, and figure out who we can tap into to sort of help some of the young men, have that connection and have some guidance. So more to come, more to follow, and I'll be sending you guys invites, as I learn more. That meeting kind of popped up at the beginning of the week, and then by Friday, it was Friday night, everybody was in here, breakout groups, and really talking about, ideas of what we can do next. At the end of the summer, we had we set up shop for the PCOB at the Back to School Bash. We talked about that in the last meeting, and we were at the Soul of Seville, but I didn't get to attend the Seville Sabrosa, so I think I probably may have pronounced that incorrectly too, without the nice flair to it. But I think some of you all attended it, right? I don't know if you want to give us a little.
We already did.
Oh, you already did that? Okay.
We already
See,
reviewed that at the Pride Festival
Oh, okay, great.
while we were waiting for you, so.
I got to see Cornell West tonight, by the way. He was at Old Cabell Hall.
Really? In
Right.
person?
Yeah, he's still there, so.
In person?
Yeah, probably only about, 70 people in attendance.
Wow.
So that was pretty awesome to check him out.
He's pretty powerful.
Yeah, he is. But, still working, gotta pick up the pieces as Hansel moves on and keep the momentum going. More to follow. Am I the town hall meeting status person on this? See that, or is that your?
I think that's me.
Okay. Well,
Mr. Chair, if I may, before we get there, I just want to make you aware, I was informed that the link to the Zoom is not allowing community members to be able to log in. So that's probably why you don't have an audience right now. I do understand that it's being streamed on the city's network, but I don't believe that people can log into Zoom, so that's for your public comment section. I'm not sure if we can post a number or a link. Is that possible?
Yeah, Remy? Sorry.
I'm looking into it.
Okay, okay. All right. Well, I hope it becomes possible. Thank you, Council, and thank you, James. Sounds like a remarkably productive and worthwhile thing to do. I don't have much to say about the town hall. I I believe that, having heard, there's basically not a lot of momentum within the board to support such an undertaking, and Hansel is leaving. So I believe that having a town hall early in November is probably not practical. Again, I think that's something that we'll put on hold for the time being, unless anyone, I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments.
Just a comment in terms of powers and abilities and duties of the board, that may be the one thing that you probably won't get any pushback on without having an executive director. But that might be an opportunity, and not necessarily for November, because it does require some coordination, but to have an opportunity or give the opportunity for community members to voice whatever they want to hear or listen, or however you want to format it, outside of this business agenda format. But that's something for you to consider.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chair, I agree. I mean, I think we should kick the can down the road just till we get back into a stable situation. But I do think we should make that a priority for the new year at the latest, and have adequate time to publicize it. I mean, my concern is we'd schedule it and then the word wouldn't get out, and then 2 people would show up.
Volunteer. Yeah,
Okay.
when Hansel sent around the initial invitation, or the kind of the thought, the recommendation that we hold a town hall, he sent a link to I'm not sure which organization put it out, but it basically was how to do a town hall.
Was it NACO?
No, the New York NYU Law School, they have a policing project, and they have like a kind of blueprint
Okay.
to how to do host town
I
hall.
probably have it in my archives, so I'll dig around for it.
Okay, well, great, thank you. All right. So now, the operating procedures, unless there are any
I was
other.
gonna say, y'all may have mentioned this and talked about it briefly. Anybody know the status on the police chief hiring?
We talked about that earlier, and
Yeah.
Hansel had,
So it is underway. From my understanding, they're expecting the city manager's office to receive some resumes within the next few weeks. But beyond that, I still don't know how the board will be engaged in that process. So that's something I'm not sure. I believe last time you mentioned, Mr. Chair, you were gonna follow up with the city manager on that, but I don't have any additional information on what that looks like.
Yep.
and Mr. Aguilar, you don't know whether the board will participate in that process? Is that what you're saying? Is that still up in the air?
Yeah, I know initially though, when we started this, I know that was an interest of the board to be involved in that, and I did relay that message, and it's not that the board's participation has been ruled out, it's just that it hasn't been made clear what exactly, how the board will be engaged in that.
Okay,
We'll continue
If I could-
Bellamy's back.
or something to.
It was
Yeah.
Bellamy.
Yeah, I'll continue.
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah.
I think the when we were going across, in hiring our executive director, I think the city provided deference to the CPD to be involved in the process. And I mean, if we're talking about this is to serve the community, I think it would be a slap in the face for us not to participate in the process as well, to give deference to the CPD, but not give the same to the board on the other way around. So hopefully that can be, hopefully we can be given that deference as well.
Well said.
Well said. I'll bring it up with the city manager.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Bellamy, Mr. Brown, just because it's gonna, I mean, tensions are already high between us and the police, and I feel like in my opinion, by us not participating, it's gonna make it look like we're more divided between us and the police. So I do agree with Mr. Brown.
Well, and it will make us look, as Mr. Brown said, like the city management does not value our opinion. So it's a matter of sort of respect and, like he says, deference as well. So I will report back to the board as soon as I hear anything and I will push very hard to make sure that we get involved. Okay, operating procedures. You know, we're almost, I feel a little embarrassed, we're almost in the same position. It looks like we're almost in the same position we have been for the last 2 months, but in reality, I think that's not the case. Over the last month or so, we have asked Lisa to provide essentially templates and drafts of some of the operating procedures that she saw as being high priority, like holding hearings, for example, and receiving complaints and so on. So she provided drafts of about perhaps a third of the operating procedures. Since then, Ms. O'Barry and I, mostly Ms. O'Barry, who has been working extremely hard, have undertaken to fit the rest of the operating procedures to the template that has been produced by Lisa Roberts, and to make sure that the operating procedures embody all of our powers. Each of the operating procedures is consistent with all the other operating procedures and so on. What we have suggested to Lisa is that we should have a complete set of operating procedures by the end of next week. That is a draft combining Lisa's work and our work. The week after that will be, if we can arrange a meeting to resolve differences or come to understand the differences in policy between us and Ms. Robertson. And then the week after that, which begins on the 31st, to share our working draft with the board and the city council, with a short description also of where the major differences of opinion are between us and Ms. Robertson. And then hopefully during that, well, I would like during that week to receive comments back. As in the past, the comments from the board, I would like them to be based from individuals and sent to me personally, because it helps, or to Ms. O'Barry, because it helps deal with forestall kind of FOIA difficulties. But I can assure you that if you send comments, they will be reckoned with and incorporated to the extent possible. But then hopefully in the first week of November, we can achieve buy-in from the mayor. The mayor has specifically asked that he be personally involved in reviewing the documents. Not surprising, he's an attorney and he had a lot of input into the ordinance. And so hopefully at the second city council meeting in November, we should be in a position to have place our operating procedures. We're hoping to place our operating procedures before the city council in a form where there's a minimum of disagreement between the various legal authorities and a maximum amount of input from the board and the city council. Pam, do you have any additional comments that you would like to make at this time?
No, I think you covered the process very well. Just to give a little more clarity, the draft that came from Ms. Robertson was comprehensive, and it did allow us to collapse quite a number of organizational or general operating procedures into one. So you will not see, I believe we started with 35, so you should not be looking to 34. You should not expect to have to review 34 separate operating procedures, but the goal with Ms. Robertson's drafts was to make sure that they encompassed the original intent, purpose, and spirit of the operating procedures that were the draft ones that were worked on with a number of parties from the original with Mr. Mendez and others. So the goal is to make sure that the new ops will feel and have the spirit of what was contemplated originally, with a very tight and very close sort of legal compliance review and policy decisions highlighted for the board and for council.
Pam,
One second, if I may, real quick, and I just want to make that announcement just because just got the information, but the Zoom link is now available. If members of the community want to try to log in and they have any questions for public comments, which is coming up next. So I just wanted to give them time to log in while you continue this discussion.
without getting into specifics, were there major sticking points with the city attorney? I mean, did you feel like there was, a lot that has to be resolved, or is there a fair amount of agreement?
I would say that there is a understandable difference in vision. That the city attorney's orientation is to be very careful to avoid any liability to the city. And so she is quite reluctant to stretch. And she is, in my opinion, very rather conservative about how the various, and restrictive about how the various powers of the board will be enacted. As we talked about a few minutes ago, the issue of how the board makes a decision not to hold a hearing is one of those nitty-gritty things that has actually come up, and we have been discussing it in the last few days.
Okay.
There is some disagreement about whether there should be a limitation on the power of the board to subpoena employees of the police department. And I think that relying on the language, we solve that problem by relying on the language in the ordinance because Lloyd Snook wrote that. And so
Was that a Garrity issue, Pam, on the subpoena within CPD?
The Garrity issue is woven through the whole subpoena of police officers issue, yes. And that is one of the highlights, I believe, that Bill and I have, in one of the drafts that Bill and I have exchanged, that has become apparent. So yes, that is going to probably end up one of the major policy decisions that will have to be worked out.
Is there not a provision?
Go
My
ahead.
apologies.
Go ahead.
Is there not a provision to where anyone who is subpoenaed can petition the court to have the court review whether or not, whether it's documents or what have you, moves forward? I'm not certain why there needs to be this extra added, whatever. If the court is there to be the intermediary for individuals who say, hey, I don't want to necessarily do this. Hey, court, can you look at this?
And is that are you asking?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the question. I mean, it seems like obviously the theme here is that there is, it's no secret that there's pushback from folk, but this is, the ordinance, from my understanding, was clear, or at least from the way the General Assembly had written things initially, was that anybody who is subpoenaed could go back and petition the court and say, here's why I shouldn't be subpoenaed, or testify or present the documents. It's whether it's a police officer or whomever else. They have that option there. So I'm not certain why there's this hesitation as if we subpoena and that's the final say.
Well, Garrity does create sort of protections, and it is not a direct comparison, but the most common way to sort of make Garrity make sense if you're not sort of deeply steeped in the police vernacular is it's kind of like Miranda, right? So if a person is charged with a crime, just a regular citizen, and you subpoena that person to try to compel them to talk about their involvement in that crime, and not to say that Garrity means a police officer has been charged with a crime, just using a sort of a rough comparison. It's sort of the same sort of overlay of protection that exists that defies the normal subpoena process. Yes, it could be compelled under certain circumstances, but there is a loss of ability to use those statements in certain forums if it is a compelled statement. So there's a lot tied up in that, but I just to sort of give you a layman's understanding of it, it's kind of like saying a person charged with a crime, we're going to subpoena you for a different kind of event, and you're going to have to tell us about that crime, even though you have a right against self-incrimination. So it's really not as simple as going to the court and saying, you know, Judge, is this subpoena good to compel this officer to say what he knows? Garrity creates certain kinds of protections around officers being compelled as it relates to acts that they've performed. Not that it cannot happen, but you have to work through the Garrity process to do that.
Yeah, and I think if I were a lawyer for a police officer, if I were a naive lawyer for a police officer, I would say something like, why does my client need to engage, you know, an expensive attorney in order to keep from incriminating himself when he's already made a statement and, you know, under Garrity. So, you know, that's another issue. And by the way, you know, we're still working on this, Bellamy. So, you know, I may well, you know, tap your expertise as we come closer to a final version. I should point out that there's still a wide range in answering Jeff's question. Again, there's still a wide range of some of the articles we think are just coming along really well. For example, the mediation, which is a very important part of, could be a very important tool for the board. I think we are coming to terms very much with, we're converging with Lisa, or Lisa is converging with us, more to the point, what mediation is and what cases can be mediated and sort of what the circumstances and procedures are for mediation. A place where we are still strong, perhaps not disagreement, but where we still need a lot of attention is in audits, which, again, this has been where Ms. Robinson has been very prescriptive, and I think that's really not called for audits in the context of police oversight as opposed to financial audits, but that is my personal opinion. So, anyway. All right, any more questions,
Thank you.
comments? And I would, again, like to thank Pam very much for putting her shoulder to the wheel and her nose to the grindstone and turning out these articles. She's been very productive, and I appreciate it. I guess our next agenda item is public comments, if there is anyone who would like to make some.
Raise hands at this time.
All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn in that case.
So move.
I second it.
Motion to adjourn. We have Member Brown,
Yes.
Member Cooper,
Yes.
Member Frazier,
Yes.
Vice Chair Watson,
Yes.
and Chair Mendez.
Yes. All right. Motion carries and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Pam. And there is going away cake over there
Nice.
celebrating the departure of Hansel.